This is a first generation Core i7 processor which I bought used over half a year ago paired with an Asus X58 motherboard. Some of you have been asking me regularly to review this thing already, and today we're finally checking it out. The i7-960 is basically the fastest 4-core 8-thread chip you could get for socket LGA 1366. It released all the way back in October of 2009 and had an MSRP of about $560. Nowadays though, you can find the CPU for less than $15. In fact, I only paid around $60 for both the CPU and the motherboard. I've been using and messing around with this setup for over a week now. I also managed to achieve a pretty good overclock out of it, and I'm really excited to share the results with you, cause I have a feeling that majority of you aren't expecting this level of performance from a CPU this old. For the specs, we have an X58 Rampage 3 formula, a Dark Freezer X128 cooler, 24GB of DDR3 memory in triple channel, an RX 6600 XT GPU, and a 700-watt power supply. Now, as you'll see in a moment, this setup doesn't perform all that well at stock, which shouldn't be a surprise since by default the memory is clocked at 1066 megatransfers and the CPU has a huge overclocking headroom, unlike what we have with modern processors unfortunately, so we're mainly going to focus on overclocking results. I was able to push the CPU to 4.1 GHz on all cores using 1.33 volts, and the memory to 1723 megatransfers with a base clock value of 215, meaning the QPI link as well as the uncore frequencies have been overclocked as well. I know that this CPU can hit even higher clocks, cause this is a DO stepping and we still have plenty of voltage headroom. Yet this is the absolute maximum overclock I was able to achieve, and going beyond any of these values either results in throttling or makes the system unstable. Like I mentioned, we're using a Radeon GPU here instead of Nvidia because of the driver overhead issue with Nvidia cards that tend to result in worse performance with old and low-end processors, though we will have a look at how the CPU performs with an RTX 2070 in a few games towards the end of the video. Vulnerability patches have also been disabled through Inspector for maximum performance. Alright, let's begin with good results, and kicking things off we have Dying Light 2, which our overclocked first-gen i7 handles quite well, both at low and high settings. The frame rate can drop down to 50s every now and then, which should be expected from a processor this old, so it isn't a big deal really. The game is still very playable. Oh, and in case the game isn't launching for you, just open up the Dying Light 2 folder, go to ph, work, bin, x64 and try deleting the runtime dx11.dll file.
Inhibitor container detected.
Next on our list we have Apex Legends, which also runs pretty good regardless of which settings we use. The frame rate can suddenly drop from 140 down to 60 frames in CPU demanding areas and situations, and while such drops are very noticeable, I honestly just can't complain. This is still a very good result. What's even more impressive is the uplift we're getting compared to stock, which can reach 45% in this title. So if you're still rocking a stock first-gen i7, especially if it's a lower clocked model, and thinking that it's time for an upgrade, think again. Next up we have Forza Horizon 5, which is another game that runs really well, even using the high preset. Days Gone also runs pretty good using both low and high presets. Unfortunately, we do get a lot of frame time spikes, and while they don't necessarily make the game unplayable, they're definitely noticeable.
Cemetery, look around. Yeah, okay. So tomorrow, get the drugs, take him to Tucker, collect on Leon's bounty. Then I say we head north.
Next on the list we have God of War, where our first-gen i7 for the most part hovers between 45 to 60 FPS using either graphics preset.
What did you find?
Tracks. Not deer, though. I'll keep looking.
Moving on, we have Spider-Man Remastered, and using the lowest settings, our 14-year-old processor is capable of delivering a playable frame rate, albeit with frequent drops to low 40s and occasional frame time spikes. Unfortunately, using the highest preset, the frame rate does drop a lot, so it's probably best to not go beyond medium settings. Compared to stock, we're once again getting a very good uplift of up to 29%, making the game much more playable. As you know, Cyberpunk 2077 is one of the most CPU demanding games out there that brings even relatively modern processors to their knees, so the fact that our overclocked first-gen i7 is capable of even running the game is an impressive result by itself. In remote areas, the frame rate is pretty good, though once we reach detailed areas with lots of NPCs, the frame rate begins to drop below 30s with tons of frame time spikes, though honestly I wouldn't say that it's completely unplayable. If you'd like to increase the settings, that is something you can do in this title since the results seem to be about the same in CPU demanding areas when using the high preset, though we do get a noticeable decrease in GPU bound areas. Comparing the performance to stock, we can all once again be impressed about the increase we're getting by pushing this system to its limits, which is absolutely massive. For our final game we have Hogwarts Legacy, which does run, but there is constant stuttering, especially in detailed areas with dozens of NPCs such as Hogsmeade. Using the high preset we're getting a noticeable drop in frame rate, while the stuttering only gets amplified, so it's best to stick to lowest possible settings.
Of Beetle the Bard.
By the way, I also wanted to test Warzone 2, though it turns out it requires AVX instructions, which our processor doesn't have, so keep in mind that games such as Assassin's Creed Odyssey, Death Stranding, and many more won't launch with this processor. Looking at temperatures, with an overclock we're getting 87 degrees Celsius in a 21 degree room using Intel burn test, though as you most likely noticed, the temps are about 15 degrees lower while gaming. When it comes to power consumption, with an overclock I never saw it exceed 450 watts, so a 600 watt power supply should be more than enough if you're thinking of overclocking this thing. Now, before we have a look at how the CPU performs with an RTX 2070, I'd like to quickly mention that the performance while recording the gameplay with Radeon does drop in some titles. For example, in games like Spider-Man, Dying Light 2, Apex Legends, and Hogwarts Legacy, there is basically no difference. In God of War as well as Forza Horizon 5, the frame rate increase is less than 10% when not recording, while in Cyberpunk, the increase in performance can reach 16%. Alright, so finally let's find out how this processor performs when paired with an NVIDIA GPU in a few titles, and these are not the results I expected to get. In Hogwarts Legacy there is a lot of stuttering regardless of which graphics card we use, though with Radeon the frame rate is higher. In Man Remastered, both cards deliver about the same performance. The RTX 2070 is even a few frames ahead, while in God of War, the frame rate is quite a bit higher with the NVIDIA GPU, though the frame time isn't as consistent as it is with Radeon. I honestly expected the performance to be much worse with the NVIDIA GPU across the board here, because this is quite an old processor, and I sure as hell didn't expect to get more frames with it, but it turns out it's not all as simple as we thought when it comes to the driver overhead issue, so we might need to have a deeper dive into this topic in one of the future videos. Personally, I had a blast using this system as my daily driver for almost 2 weeks. I absolutely love this era of CPUs, and this right here could totally be the dream PC of some of you back in 2009. I really enjoyed overclocking it, even though it took me quite a bit of time, because it's not something that you can do anymore the way you could with older processors, and doing so makes the system so much more snappier and responsive. I really was not expecting this CPU to perform this good, which got me thinking, if this is how a quad-core performs, then what about something like an i7-990X or 6-core Xeons that are available for this platform? So I went ahead and got a Xeon X5670, which we're going to have a look at hopefully in less than 6 months. Anyways, that's been it. Thank you guys for watching. Feel free to watch some of my other videos over here. Be sure to leave a like, subscribe for more content, and I'll see y'all in the next one.